I'm David Anderson, the bridge pastor at Sylvania United Church of Christ. This is our weekly Keeping in Touch, informing you about events occurring in the church and some of the programs that are going on. This week is a little different. Last night we had our monthly cabinet meeting, and a number of important items were discussed and voted upon. And we thought it was important to inform the congregation of where we are in relationship to a number of events. So today, rather than having the staff give you updates, we have the moderator and vice moderator of the church, Jean Brockmeyer and Jeff Finch, who will inform us of everything that transpired last night. And we're going to begin with Jeff, our vice moderator, who is going to begin by bringing you up to date with what is happening with the LPGA and then whatever other items he has. So Jeff, it's your game.
Thanks, David. And before I get started, on behalf of Jean and myself and the entire cabinet, I want to offer our sincere thanks to David and the entire church staff for the excellent job that they're doing, keeping us all together while we're physically separated. I think we underestimate sometimes the amount of new technologies that have been learned on the fly to do these kit videos and to do recordings from home for sermons and other type of worship. So again, David and the entire staff, thank you and keep up the great work.
Thank you very much.
With that, let me just briefly update you on the LPGA. I think many people knew that it was originally scheduled for July 6th through July 12th. That has been pushed back 2 weeks to start July 20th through the 26th. As of right now, it's anticipated that the tournament will be held. I noticed the other day that they're selling tickets and anticipating it. It all comes down to what the governor says and whether or not they're able to have attendees take part, because I heard Judge Silverman say that without a crowd, it's pointless to have it from a financial standpoint. So if everyone would just mark your calendars for 7/20 through 7/26, if they have the tournament, we will expect to be parking some number of cars in our parking lot and can use volunteer help. And you'll hear more about that as we learn more about the actual status of the tournament. Secondly, I'd like to update our April financials. We're 4 months into the year, and we'd like to, again, offer our sincere thanks to the congregation for getting us off to what I would call a very solid start. Our giving is higher than planned, our expenses are lower than planned, and that has netted us a surplus through 4 months. Now, I just want to caveat that a bit by saying that the giving is above plan because many pledge units have either fulfilled their full year pledge already or have given in advance. And our expenses are lower because we simply have so many open positions. Obviously, we're without a senior pastor, we're without an associate pastor, without a health ministries leader, and also without children's ministry. Several of those roles are being aptly filled by interim people, but our expenses are lower. And it's safe to say that we expect both the giving and the expenses to level as we go through the year, or to converge upon one another. So it's absolutely critical that each of you that are able, please keep up your pledges as you have been, because it's very important to the work of the church. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jean for a couple of other updates, and then I'll pick it up later on. Jean?
Thanks, Jeff. I have some very good news to report. After a lot of discussion about the pros and cons, Cabinet decided to apply for a small business loan under the Payment Protection Plan. I have to thank Jason Strasser for guiding us through that process. We recently learned that we received what we asked for, which was $35,000. That will cover approximately 2 months of the expenses that we can use the loan to pay for, which is salaries and utilities. If we use the loan within the correct period of time for the correct expenses, it will be totally forgiven. So we're very happy to have that as a small cushion when we have so much uncertainty about the church. I also would like to mention that the Senior Pastor Search Committee continues their work. They're making good progress and they're working really hard. Maybe we'll see them soon. Jeff?
Okay, thanks, Jean. For the next several minutes, I'd like to talk about the work of our COVID-19 team at church. And first, I'd like to introduce them. David Anderson, Mary Meadows, Elaine Jansen, Peggy Meisner, Tom Taylor, Kelly Michael, Jane Ransom, Jean, and myself have formed a COVID-19 team. And you'll recall back at the end of March, that team made its first difficult decision, which was to suspend church on office operations in concert with the guidance that we were being given by the state and the denomination leadership. And obviously we've remained shut down since then. But we're not going to stay shut down forever. And so the committee has now shifted its focus to how we go about reopening and when we go about reopening. And what I wanted to do today is walk you through the considerable work that has been done around the how that we can reopen. And then we'll talk more about the when. Sequentially, the how relates to first worship on Sundays, and then secondly, how to reopen the office, and then third, how to reopen the church building for use by small groups as well as third parties that have used our church religiously, like AA or folks like that. And so today I want to focus on the how of worship. And so if each of you can kind of just envision yourself pulling up to church on a Sunday morning, whether you come to the first service or the second service, here's some of the highlights of what will change when we're back together. First off, there'll only be one entrance to the church, and that will be the main entrance off the main parking lot. The front entrance will be closed, as will the office entrance, the kitchen entrance, and the downstairs entrance, simply because we're trying to limit contact points. Every attendee will be required to wear a mask, and this is for the safety of the other attendees as well as yourself. And so as you pull up to church, the expectation is you'll put your mask on, exit your car, maintain proper social distancing from other people arriving at the same time, and proceed to come into the church. If you don't have a mask, we will have a limited supply of masks available outside the door before you come in. And this is an opportunity. I know there's several folks within the congregation that have been making masks. If you've taken care of your personal needs and your family needs and have extra masks that you'd like to donate to the church for those that may not have one, that would be gratefully appreciated. You can just simply drop them off at the church in advance of when we reopen, and there'll be plenty of notice when that day comes. So once you're masked up, you'll enter the church. There'll be hand sanitizing stations available for you to sanitize your hands. There will be an attendant. I'm not calling this person a greeter, but an attendant to take attendance. Why? We want to take attendance of all people in the service so that we have contact tracing mechanism in the event that someone were to test positive after the fact. And so that's a safety protocol that we're putting in place. It'll be a simple process of saying who you are, and if you're a member of the church, you'll be checked off on the directory because we already have your contact information. If you're bringing a visitor or if somebody comes in that day for a first time, we'll just collect their name and cell phone number so that we can be in contact with them. As you bypass that area and proceed into the gathering area, what you will experience is a vast emptiness of the gathering area where all the things that you're used to are going to be gone. The furniture, the name tags, the hangers, the coat hangers, the sign-up sheets, the for sale items, the information tables, anything that's a touch point will be gone simply to minimize the potential spread of the virus. Access to the building other than the sanctuary and the main set of restrooms just to the left will be also closed. And there'll be an area just outside the nursery in the event of a family or an individual having to leave the sanctuary for emergency or for upset child during the service. But the nursery itself will be closed, and we will ask each family member to maintain their children with them that they bring to the worship service. As you progress toward the narthex area, there'll be appropriate signage to help you maintain social distancing. There will be ushers there that will seat the church from the front to the back. So if you don't want to sit up front, get there late. If you don't care, get there on time. But we will seat you from the front to the back, appropriately socially distanced by the size of your group. And when church is over, you will be released from the front to the back, exiting out the door on the front right side of the sanctuary, up near the pulpit, and out the hallway past the office into the parking lot. That will reduce the need or opportunity for gathering. And again, there'll be hand sanitizer stations there also as you exit the church. There's a few other caveats inside the sanctuary, things like bulletins, ritual friendship pads, hymnals, Bibles, pencils, paper, children's busy bags will all be stored and put away for the time being. And the intent is to display the order of worship on a screen so that we can all participate that way. The worship team is working through the concept of sacraments in terms of a safe way to potentially do communion and or other things like baptisms, and there'll be more on that as we get closer to the time when we know that we'll be reconvening. Now, it would go without saying that it's absolutely positively, we're not able to guarantee a safe environment, and we don't want to mislead anybody there. We are taking every step that we could think of, utilizing guidance that we've gotten from state health associations, the denomination office, companies, and other means that we found on the internet to troubleshoot every area we could think of to troubleshoot to make it as safe as possible. But if there's any question as to your own personal safety, we urge you to continue to worship from home, because we will be videotaping the services and posting them online, much like David has been doing now, except that we hope to be able to videotape these live during the sanctuary and then post them later in the day on Sunday, rather on the night before. And there'll be more about that later. Cabinet has endorsed last night all of these protocols. We have arrival and departure protocols, which I just went through, a safety checklist. We have protocols for the entry personnel, guidelines for the ushers, as well as safe family worship guidelines for those of you with children, and then signage that will be required to make sure that people know which areas are off limits as well as which ones are open. So I think that pretty much covers everything that is in the works right now on the how. Then there's the question of when. And right now, as David has mentioned, I think in a past video, we are still closed through at least May 24th. The earliest possible that we could start back up would be May 31st. And what we can tell you now is that we will communicate as far in advance as we know when we're ready to open the church and give you the chance to come back and return to worship. We don't expect to be overwhelmed by folks. If we find that the attendance is greater than planned, we may need to institute an electronic RSVP system just so that we don't end up with a bunch of people standing around accidentally. I don't think that's a challenge at the first service. Sometimes it can be at the second service, given the fact that we'll be socially spaced inside the church. So with that, David, I don't know if there was any comments or questions you had. I'll be quiet for a minute and let you ask.
Yeah, a couple questions and comments. In regard to opening, we will be very attentive to guidelines given by the CDC and by our governor and everything in making this decision. It will not be an arbitrary decision at all, but will be carefully considered and weighed. And I want everybody to be aware of that. And also all of the thought and everything that has gone into making these guidelines for this time. And to realize that from that, the chances are greatly diminished regarding anything happening because if we practice these guidelines that have been established by the committee. Just even the fact of wearing a mask alone greatly reduces the chance of the spread of the virus. So the committee has worked terribly hard on all of these, and I can't stress that enough. Also, what I would suggest is that people listening to this video maybe listen to it another time so that you can absorb more some of the things that Jeff has said. And then also to contact your friends and fellow church members and ask them to listen to this video, because it's very, very important in the work that has been done by the committee. Jean, did you have anything you wanted to say regarding?
I just wanted to add that we will be posting these written guidelines online so that everybody has a chance to read them, and we'll send them out to the people who don't use online capabilities.
And just one other point to emphasize, every person is at their own journey in terms of how safe they feel, right? And so when we reopen, it's purely optional for anybody to come or not come. You aren't going to be judged by whether you're there or not just because we're open. Make your own decision based on your own personal safety and that of your family. And we will do our best to make the environment as safe as we possibly can.
And we're trying to affirm whatever decision that may be, whether to stay at home, there'll be the opportunity to listen to the full worship service at home, or whether you are at the church. We're trying to affirm whatever decision you make. Okay, now Jean, you had some other things you wanted to bring up?
Yes, I wanted to, this is not the formal announcement, but we do have a mid-year meeting scheduled for June 28th, and that's extremely important because we only passed a 6-month budget, so we need to work on the next 6 months. That's also a meeting where we'll vote for cabinet officers, board chairs, and a few other committee members. Along with that, and along with what we've been saying about people's choice to stay home and worship, Cabinet just voted to approve a modest upgrade to the sanctuary audiovisual capabilities. We're hoping to develop a basic system so that David can preach from the sanctuary, and we can videotape and post that, and then at some point possibly move to live streaming. But we're going to start with baby steps. The staff have all been using, and we're using right now, our personal equipment, and that quality is variable. So we want to be able to provide a better worship experience for everybody. So we will be doing, as I said, a modest upgrade. It's a very coordinated effort, starting with the COVID committee, the cabinet, trustees, and endowment. And we hope to have some clear effort very soon. We're working on getting pricing right now. For the mid-year meeting, back to the mid-year meeting, we need to figure out a voting process, and we are working on that. There's a couple of options that we have. So we're going to do our best to have that figured out in the near future. Finally, I want to mention that we have many volunteer opportunities, even though we're not actively at church. We mentioned sewing masks. We're looking for volunteers for boards and committees right now. We also need people to call those of our congregation who are homebound, to write notes to them. And then of course, the volunteer for LPGA parking, if that comes to pass. So please be looking for these opportunities, and we thank you for everything you're helping with.
And I might add to that, sometimes maybe when you drive by the church right now, it looks kind of still and quiet or empty, but to realize that there is still a lot going on in the name of Sylvania United Church of Christ. For instance, the cabinet meeting last night, there were 16 people on Zoom that were a part of that cabinet meeting. And then tomorrow, we have the coronavirus committee that continues to work. They're now going to be working on weekday procedures that will be needed. And then there'll be a staff meeting on Zoom as well tomorrow. So there's still quite a bit of activity going on, even though it may appear from the street level that everything is quiet. And I also, particularly during this time, want to thank Jean and Jeff for their contributions that they have made and the dedication that they have had to our church during this time. It's required a lot of work, and both of them have been there and attempted through all these processes to be very, very fair in the deliberation and the decisions that have been made. So it's been an honor, really, to be a part of this process, and I thank them very much. And thank everybody for listening. And again, I encourage you, if you could, to let other church members particularly listen to this video where Jeff gives all of the procedures for re-entering the church. Thank you. We'll see you next week.